was shocked at the number of students that had never visited school before. I think it's it's a completely different admissions landscape from when I was in school. So when we gave tours, there was no script, there was no route.
Wow.
You pretty much asked, it was pretty much what the families were interested in to major in. And if they weren't interested in sports, you didn't show them the arena. And if, they didn't care about chapel, but we didn't have the volume that colleges and universities have today. I mean, Laura, how many, not including your open houses, just the Monday through Friday and Saturday, how many students did you have at Occidental last year?
Oh, gosh, I can't even count. The number increased so much.
Thousands. I mean,
oh, my gosh. That is kind of, it's a huge amount. Wow. And
Definitely.
Laura, what about you? How is that when you were giving college tours? What was it like?
Well, interestingly enough, the tour guide manual that I use as a tour guide is pretty much the same tour guide manual we were using, of course, with the facts updated every year. But I think that, just like Jeff kind of mentioned, our volume of visitors has changed dramatically since even I was a tour guide, and that was only about 7 years ago when I was doing that. And so I think that with those changes, let's
see.
Did we lose her?
I don't know. I can't hear. Laura?
Yes?
Okay. Can you repeat that last sentence? We lost you a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
It's fine.
I think that with the increased number of visitors, we just have to really rethink the tour and rethink the whole purpose of it. And so I think tour guides used to be under the impression, I was under the impression that I was talking about my experience, but also talk about, the student enrollment, the classes, the technical stuff. And so I think that now that we have this extra interest and the questions are so much more keen and, specific, that now my advice to the tour guides is talk about yourself, because they'll get the facts from myself, from my colleagues, but they won't get those current student stories, because I don't think that they're interested in my student stories anymore, because they're from, 4 to 8 years ago now.
And what are the types of questions that someone should ask during an information session that they shouldn't ask during a tour, or vice versa? I think we covered it a little bit, but maybe more specific. Laura, you can go ahead on that one too.
The technical questions about how to apply for financial aid, about whether or not someone should apply early decision, about what they should write about in their personal statement, if they should interview, things that are technical, because that's my job. It's our job to counsel students, to talk to them about the process, about the specifics of the college. If somebody has a question about the overall academic program, those are things that are best asked of a professional. Anything that doesn't involve life, like current life on campus, that's something that should really be directed towards us.
And should they interview in general?
Some students should interview.
So I think it depends on the student, or?
Definitely. It's a wonderful thing for lots of students because it adds a lot of depth and dimension to their file, and it's great to get to converse with these students, but not everybody thrives in that kind of an opportunity, and that's perfectly fine. It's why we don't require the interview. So for students who maybe are not talkative, don't like to speak with people with whom they're not very familiar, I would hold back. But if you're someone who wants to share your experience with us, I love talking with students. It's what really adds more color to every application.
And then another question for Laura, sorry about that, but is you were talking about how, this is the question I forgot earlier, but you were talking about how when you see these students, sometimes they'll stand out to you in a good way or in a bad way, but you can only kind of use that information if they're in your region. So I kind of know some of the logistics. I read The Gatekeepers. I don't know if either of you know the book, but I read The Gatekeepers, and so I know some of the logistics of how, I guess what they do is they have regional representatives that read the files from each region. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that it?
We divide the country up, and we each read a certain consortium of areas. And
That must
Just
be a
to
lot
kind
of files. Wow.
There's a lot of reading done. And just to add to that, if I feel strongly about someone, I'll just go to my colleague who reads that territory and tell them, or I'll add a note into their file. So it's not as if that positive interaction will ever be lost. It won't be my memory serving them on their file. It will be like my note.
Like
to
a little,
inform.
yeah.
Exactly.
So if you have like a great connection with would a tour guide have that same power to do that or not?
Not really. I think that they interact with so many people positively, and they're generally such nice people that they're not going to come back saying negative things about the visitors. It'd be kind of inappropriate.
Okay, so that's not really the role. And then what about the interviewers, the senior interviewers? Do they have that position? I guess they would because they're actually putting information into the file.
Definitely, yes. They will give us their opinions on the student. And, they're hired for a reason because we believe they have the ability to speak with students and to gauge their level of interest in Oxy, see if they would contribute nicely to our community. So we definitely value what they have to say because these conversations for interviews last anywhere between 30 minutes and an hour. And so that's a lot of time that student has given to us, and we really want to respect that.
Mm-hmm. And so pretty much all the interactions, if there's something that really stands out, will actually be qualified, it sounds like, which is nice to know as a student. Once again, it's kind of reassuring to know that it's not just getting lost in a woodwork of, all these admissions process.
Right.
And then kind of more about the underneath admission stuff. Are there ever things about a school, this is for both of you, that you train tour guides to not talk about? Are there things that you try to kind of keep hidden about a school, and how do you do that? Go ahead, Jeff. Or Laura. It's fine. Laura, go ahead.
Oh, I don't think we hide things. I think we have our students anticipate difficult questions.
Okay.
Because they are
would be
inevitable. When our president resigned a couple of years ago, we told people, you'll be asked about this, be honest about it, talk about your experience, but we'll also tell them updates or the way that they can positively view it. Okay. So we never want somebody to lie or to conceal anything about the campus because all of those facts are reality. It's part of the college and it's part of someone's experience. And so we just tell people when to be ready for those tougher questions.
Yeah, and Jeff, how do you deal with that? For instance, if you go to a school and they have like a really high crime rate or something, how do you tell the tour guides or, anyone in the administration, how do you tell them to deal with that?
I think one is if people ask a question, they deserve an answer, right? They're asking a question. But I think a lot of times the students only have a certain perspective and they have to say, in my perspective, the answer is ask another student. But, how's crime? Well, that's somewhat subjective, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can go to websites and all the statistics are there and all of that. And, I've been to big urban campuses and the kids feel very safe and they've never had usually it might be someone in the own community or something, or they left the laptop out in the middle of campus or something. So I do agree with Laura. I think we're very much about being real, being authentic. But that's reality perception. And I think as long as students answer a question, and answer it honestly, but again, that to me comes back to who should you be asking what questions? Admissions knows the statistics on crime on campus and crime in the surrounding area and all of those kind of things. I think the question to me better off is, do you feel safe?
And what if a student doesn't? Do you tell them not to?
I think that if they don't, they, number one, probably wouldn't be giving tours, or probably because they are a tour guide or ambassador, they're really connected and they're giving feedback back to admissions, to student life and to student leadership. I don't feel safe walking across campus at night. There's going to be a student government, issue on that. You're going to get more lights. You're going to have escort service brought up, all of those type of things. Yeah. I've never heard a student say, no, they don't feel safe on the biggest city, most urban campuses.
Well, good. That's good to hear. That's very reassuring. But so basically it sounds like the schools are pretty honest about most of the stuff, which could be a little surprising. How do you get...
I think schools tend to sometimes